Most men over 40 think that more sets equal more gains, but that's exactly why they stay stuck. My clients in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are gaining muscle fast, doing just 2 sets per exercise. And this 2-set method is exactly what I use to take my body from this to this. So in this video, I'm gonna explain why 2 sets per exercise is all you need to build a strong, lean, and muscular body after 40, and then show you step by step how to implement this 2-set method in your workouts. So in any given workout, there are always 2 main elements that you're playing with. You have volume and intensity. Volume is simply the number of exercises and sets that you're doing. Intensity is how hard you train, or in other words, how close you push your sets to failure. And training to failure just means pushing your sets to where you can no longer move the weight despite exerting maximal effort. Now, I want to share a quote with you that I heard early on in my training journey that completely changed the trajectory of how I work out and really shaped the entire philosophy that I teach on this channel. And it was from a guy named Arthur Jones, who was one of the pioneers of effective weight training and also the mentor of Mike Mentzer, who you might be familiar with. And the quote goes, "You can either train long or you can train hard, but you can't do both." So when I first got into weight training over 8 years ago at this point, I followed conventional bodybuilding programs where I was in the gym 5 to 6 days a week doing endless exercises and sets in each workout. And I did that for about a year before I realized that the return on investment didn't make sense and that I wasn't getting the best results. So it was after a year that I rethought my approach and I started doing less. I did fewer exercises, fewer sets, and I spent fewer days in the gym every single week. And it was when I made that shift that I realized one of the most important learning lessons of my entire training career, which was the trade-off between volume and intensity. So as soon as I reduced the number of exercises and sets that I was doing in each workout, I was able to put a lot more effort and focus into my training. And so I realized that I had this untapped level of effort and focus that I wasn't putting into my training because of how much training I was doing. And so this comes back to that Arthur Jones quote: you can either train long or you can train hard, but you can't do both. And so what happens is that when you do a lot of volume, you do endless exercises and sets, your intensity has to decrease. But if you flip the script and you do less volume, you can put a lot more intensity into your training. So here's the best example I could give. Imagine that you're going into training and you're doing an exercise and you're doing 5 sets. Whether you realize this consciously or not, you're not going to pour maximum effort and focus into these 5 sets because deep down, you know, oh shit, I got 5 sets to get through. I better hold back. I better conserve energy and intensity in order to get through all of these sets. So what tends to happen, again, whether you realize it or not, usually this is subconscious, is that you put about maybe 50% effort into each of these sets. Now let's flip the script. Imagine that you're going into an exercise and you only have to do 2 sets. You're going to approach these 2 sets with a completely different mindset. It is no longer going to be a mindset of, oh, I better hold back in order to get through all this work. It's more a mindset of like, oh, I only have 2 sets to get through. I better make these 2 sets count. And so what happens is that you put 100% effort into both of these sets. Now you're probably thinking, okay, this makes sense, but why is this relevant? Why does this matter? Well, the thing to understand is that the more effective strategy between these two is always this one. It is always to do fewer sets, but put more effort and focus into those fewer sets. And the reason why is because in weight training, quality always beats quantity. The truth is, the duration and quantity of your training are kind of irrelevant when it comes to building muscle. What actually matters in weight training is training hard. This is fundamentally what stimulates muscle growth. I do not care if you're doing 5 sets if all of those sets are done with half-assed effort, because none of these sets are going to stimulate muscle growth. By the way, guys, if you'd like my personal help putting this into action so you can build muscle, feel proud of what you see in the mirror, and regain your confidence and masculinity, click the link in my description below and book a free call with me. During the call, we'll break down your current situation, identify what's holding you back, and outline a clear plan to help you achieve your goals. There's zero pressure, it's just a real conversation to see if I can help you or not. And whether you join or not, you'll walk away with clarity and a path forward. What actually stimulates muscle growth is pushing close to failure and actually damaging your muscles. You don't damage your muscles through doing 5 sets with 50% effort. You damage your muscles through pushing your sets to failure. And the only way to sustainably push your sets to failure is to do less. It's to do fewer sets. And so this is why more sets do not equal more gains. It is because when you do more sets, you just dilute your effort and focus. And not only that, but more sets also equals more fatigue, right? So this is actually more fatiguing than this. And that makes it harder to recover from your training and grow and also achieve consistent strength gains. So the amount of clients that I have that come to me regularly telling me like, Rio, like, holy shit, I didn't think this whole 2-set thing was gonna work, but when I went down to 2 sets, I was able to actually put a lot more effort into those sets. I had this untapped level of effort and focus that I didn't know was there. And I've also seen better strength gains. I'm gaining strength on a weekly basis. And so you're always better off doing fewer sets, but putting more effort into those sets. You'll stimulate more muscle growth and you'll also recover better because you're not doing endless sets. And not to mention, this also saves you a bunch of time. Like with this 2-set method, you can be in and out of the gym very quickly and see the best results of your life. So let me show you another way to look at this to really drive the point home. Let me show you another example. So there's something called effective rep theory. Effective rep theory states that there are only 5 quality reps that actually stimulate muscle growth in any given set that you do. And obviously, these are the final 5 reps before you fail. And so remember, when you do too many sets, you tend to leave reps in the tank because deep down you know, oh shit, I got a ton of sets to get through. I better hold back in order to get through all these sets. So you leave repetitions in the tank. This is what most people do when they're doing 4 to 5 sets per exercise. Now, when you do fewer sets, when you do just 2 sets, you don't leave reps in the tank because you know you need to make those sets count and you can actually afford to make them count because you don't have endless sets to get through. Here's a fascinating example, guys. So let's say that you're someone who leaves 4 reps in the tank on every single set that you do. Well, you would need 10 total sets to get 10 effective reps. Now, if you leave 0 reps in the tank, which you can do if you actually do fewer sets, you end up only needing 2 total sets to achieve 10 effective reps. So most men over 40 follow this strategy, and it's so ineffective. Like most men just do endless sets, but they leave like 3 to 5 reps in the tank on every set. They do not train hard because they're doing so many sets. And so it prevents them from actually being able to train hard. So this is worse for stimulating muscle growth, and it also fatigues you way more because look at the difference here. This is 10 total sets, which is obviously a lot more fatiguing overall than just 2 total sets. And this stimulates more muscle growth because you're actually pushing these sets close to failure. So there's actually another reason why doing just 2 sets per exercise is a lot more effective for stimulating muscle growth after 40. And so there's this moniker that I constantly repeat to my clients, and it goes, stimulate, don't annihilate. So everybody has this idea that in weight training, the goal is to absolutely annihilate yourself. You should leave your workouts absolutely destroyed with nothing left to give. And this whole mentality stems from bodybuilding culture, but that is not true. You never want to annihilate yourself in your training because you won't be able to actually recover between sessions. And if you don't recover between sessions, you will not gain muscle. So you want to do just enough to stimulate muscle growth and then get out. So successful weight training comes down to stringing together progressive workouts. And by progressive workouts, I mean workouts in which you are getting stronger week by week. And to do that, you want to train brief but hard and then get out of the gym, recover, and come back a little bit bigger and stronger. And so most routines do not accomplish this because they're built for steroid users. And steroid users have the recovery ability to be able to handle completely destroying themselves in each workout. But as a man over 40, your recovery ability is limited. You cannot trash yourself in every single workout and expect to come back consistently bigger and stronger. That is not how it works. When you're drug-free and you're over 40, your recovery ability is limited and it makes it so that less is actually more. So I have a client named Daniel who's 62 years old and he's been working with me for a while now. And before he started working with me, he was training 5 to 6 days a week and he constantly felt destroyed. He was working with some, generic personal trainer who didn't really know what he was doing and had him doing way too much, quite frankly. And when we cut him back to doing just 2 sets per exercise, instead of doing like 4 to 5 and doing endless exercises in each routine, he actually started to get stronger, leaner, recovered better, gained more muscle, and basically achieved a ridiculous body transformation. And so I see way too many men getting caught in this mindset of trying to annihilate themselves, but that's not the goal. You want to do just enough to stimulate growth and then get out of the gym, rest, recover, and then come back a little bit bigger and stronger. And to do that, you only need 2 sets per exercise. So now that you understand the philosophy behind this 2-set method, let's talk about how to actually do these 2 sets. And for that, I'm going to introduce a training style to you called the Polarity training method, which I coined. So there are different ways that people like to conduct their sets. Some people like to do straight sets across where they use the same weight across every single set. Some people like to do pyramids where they start light and then they finish with their heavy set last. I actually like to flip the script and start heavy and then finish light. So the way that this translates into doing just 2 sets is that you basically have a top set followed by a back down set. So heavy set, lighter set. And there are 2 different reasons why I really love doing that. The first thing is more intensity. There's less holding back when you do your heavy set first and then your second set a little bit lighter. So if you've ever done straight sets, there's this factor where you know that you have to repeat the same weight on the subsequent sets after the first one. And what that does is it makes you hold back a little bit because you're like, oh shit, I got to do this weight again. So I better not put like everything into this first set. So your sets don't have as much quality. Whereas if you know that you only have to do that heavy weight once, you put maximum intensity and focus into that set. And the key thing here is that the first set is always the most important for stimulating growth because that's when you're freshest. So you want your first set to be maximum intensity, maximum focus. The only way you can do that is by going a bit lighter after because it's really difficult to replicate the same performance again. And so it makes sense to go a little bit lighter on the back down set. It sort of accommodates the natural performance drop off that happens when you train really intensely. And there's also this other factor called upper threshold muscle fiber recruitment. So when you start with the heavy, like, let me say this. If you've ever done something along the lines of this training style, where you go heavy first and then you go lighter after, you'll always notice that the lighter sets feel really light. They feel a lot lighter than they would if you would have started with those weights. And the reason why is because when you do the heavy set first, you recruit upper threshold muscle fibers. And it makes it so that all the subsequent sets that you do after the first one are actually more effective because you're using more muscle for them than you would have if you would start with them. So by doing the heavy set first, you're recruiting upper threshold muscle fibers, and then you're still using those upper threshold muscle fibers on the second set. So you're getting more out of the lighter sets than you would if you would have started with that weight. And so it actually makes your training more effective and more efficient. So let's talk about how this actually works. So obviously you're gonna have 2 sets. You're gonna have set 1 and then set 2. Now, as far as rep range, literally anything between 5 and 20 reps stimulates muscle growth as long as you push your sets close to failure and you progressively overload those sets over time. A lot of people think that there's like some magic rep number for stimulating muscle growth. That's not true at all. Anything between 5 and 20 works as long as you actually push those sets hard. What's more important than a rep number is effort and progressive overload. So for this example, let's just say that for your first set, you're gonna do 6 to 8 reps. And then for your second set, you're going to do 8 to 10 reps. What you're gonna do is you're going to warm up to this first set, and then you're gonna hit this and you're gonna push it all out. You're gonna go as, you're gonna use as much weight as you can for 6 to 8 reps, and you're gonna push that set close to failure, right? And then once you're finished that set, you're going to take off 10% of the weight. And then if you're doing compound exercises, you're gonna rest 3 to 5 minutes. If you're doing isolation exercises, you can do 1 to 2 minutes. And then you're gonna go for your second back down set, and you're gonna go for 8 to 10 reps. So you actually jumped a range. And the reason why I like doing that is because I think using a spectrum of different rep ranges is beneficial for muscle growth because different rep ranges recruit different levels of muscle fibers. And also, when you take 10% of the weight off the first set, you're going to find that you're able to get a couple more reps. So this is really, really simple, but it's brutally effective. Now, there's one important thing to always keep in mind, and I cannot stress this enough. When you're doing just 2 sets, all your sets must be pushed to 0 reps in reserve. You cannot do just 2 sets and then leave 3 to 5 reps in the tank. That would completely defeat the purpose of doing just 2 sets. Remember, the whole reason we do fewer sets is so that we can push them harder, so that our effort and focus is not diluted. So if you do just 2 sets, but you don't push them hard, it's not going to work. Remember the trade-off between volume and intensity. If you do a lot of volume, you can't train as hard. If you do less volume, you have to train hard in order to make the sets count. So you always want to push your sets to 0 reps in reserve, and pushing your sets to 0 reps in reserve just means squeezing out every single rep that you can do using good form. That's a really important caveat. Never sacrifice your technique to get more reps. As soon as you reach the point in the set where you've squeezed out every single rep that you can do using good technique, that's when you rack the bar. You don't rack the bar a single rep sooner. If you enjoyed this video, you're gonna love this video right here where I break down the entire 2 workout, 2 set method men over 40 are using to get jacked fast.